You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, February 17th. Joining me, as always, on a Monday is my Monday co-host, Weston. How you doing today, man?
Forgot it was Monday. But you already know that. But glad to be here. Just nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say it. But Steph, thank you for all your help just a few moments ago. But I'm good. Ready to talk Niners.
Weston is preparing himself to embark in 49ers content creation like full send. And I suggest that you guys subscribe to him now before he becomes, this big online phenomenon. So if you want to do that, Island 49 on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to Weston. But Weston, happy to have you here. As always, don't get too big and leave me now.
Never. I don't think I'm going too far. I won't repeat the question that I had for Steph, but if that's evidence, you ain't getting rid of me anytime soon.
He's a bit technically challenged, but we all are some days. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on blast.
No, you're fine. You're fine. If we can't laugh at ourselves, what are we doing here, right?
Well, it was a bit of a slower week, I'd say, for 49ers news, which is actually kind of nice because I think it's every week almost since the 49ers have started their offseason. I feel like there's been something out there to kind of latch onto. And, you could talk about the fact that Max Crosby visited the Bay Area this weekend, of course, because it was the All-Star game in the Bay Area. He came over for that, but he then tweeted out and said, he misses the Bay, he loves the Bay, all these things, professing his love to the Bay Area, obviously because he played for the then Oakland Raiders. But hey, Max, I do know a team that still plays in the Bay Area, and you'd look good in red and gold. So that's one thing that we could certainly talk about, but it's not enough for me. And let's go with something concrete. And something concrete that happened is that the 49ers have hired a new cornerback coach. That is Ray Brown that they've hired. He is from Boston College, and he has a ton of experience, close to, I think, 13, 14 years as a college coach. So if you're looking here on the screen, just a vast resume that he has, coaching secondary, cornerbacks, DBs, all one and the same. But for the 49ers, he will be coaching cornerbacks. That might make some of you wonder, well, Steph, the 49ers have, their DB coach, Daniel Bullocks, what's going to happen with him? Is he out? All signs point, and I only say this because I've seen some of the beat writers mention this, that Daniel Bullocks is here to stay. But Weston, what was your initial reaction to this news and how it could help this 49ers defense get back on track?
I'll be as candid as I possibly can in this. Ray Brown was not a name that I knew, right? He's in the college ranks. What I can say is when you go do your investigation, what I, at first glance, might be a little like, this guy doesn't have a continuous stay anywhere, right? He just continues to go. But if you look a little more closely, post being a grad assistant, a GA, right, where you're essentially still going to school and doing things to be a GA in some capacity, you see the progression, right? From Abilene Christian to Troy to Utah State to Washington State to Boston College. So it seems like there's some steam behind his name. And then on the direct line that I'm drawing is okay, he was working under Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien knows knows Robert Saleh, and then, you know what I mean? And this is the incestual world that is the National Football League. It's who you know, not what you know. So clearly has made some of the right connections along the way. But I don't know, Steph. I'd be a complete liar if I'm like, this is a home run hire. This is not. I think like most 49er fans, I like Daniel Bullocks, right? He's had tenure with us, defensive backfield, I feel like we've seen progress. We've seen Diamador Lenore like mature right before our eyes, right? And we've seen some good play out of them as of late. I don't know. I don't know what he brings, but I'm more curious as to what does that mean for Daniel long term, right? Does he move into more of like the assistant coach role, like the Brandon Staley type? I don't, I mean, I know the Gus Bradley's there, so I don't know. Like I don't know what that means, but I think like if you're bringing in a young, fresh mind, you got young defensive backs that you want to see continue to mature. Like maybe there's a little bit more of a hyper focus there. Maybe you get a little bit more production out of the Darrell Looters, the guys who you've invested draft capital, haven't seen the field. But I don't know. Candidly, this is all speculation at this point, Steph.
I mean, I don't think any of us really know, right? Unless you were maybe a fan of Boston College and
you're really not unless you graduated from there. So.
Yeah, let's be honest, right? Yeah. Let's be honest. And there's no shame in that. But I think you pointed out perfectly the things that, as soon as you found out this news, like what are the things that stood out right away, right? Yes, I went ahead, looked at his Wikipedia, saw this coaching experience. Good. It's a plus that he has so much experience. The one takeaway I had, no long stints, as you mentioned. The longest stint he's had was Abilene Christian, right? 2-3 seasons there. So yeah, I think that was the one takeaway. But I do think that. Oh, and the second thing was also I was wondering, what connection does he have with Robert Saleh? And so I'm glad that you kind of made that connection because I hadn't really pieced it together yet. I assumed there was something that they knew each other from or friends of friends. The coaching world is so small that way. But one thing that, with this news that, originally came from Matt Zenitz on Twitter, CBS Sports, is he pointed out, Ray Brown previously worked at Washington State, where he coached Panthers 2024 draft pick, Chow Smith-Wade. I loved Smith-Wade coming out of the draft. And if he is any indication of a player that he can, maybe build in or develop in a sense, then, that has a bit of my vote of confidence. And so I think, look, you already have a DB's coach with Daniel Bullocks. As I mentioned, I don't think Bullocks is going anywhere just based on all the indications, right? And so I think you're just bolstering your coaching staff and you're making sure that every corner of this defense is taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And has the coaching and development in place. And as Invader says, Brown might allow Bullocks to move to a more concentrated job with the secondary, which, by the way, he already has. Bullocks is already the defensive passing game specialist, in addition to being the defensive backs coach. So yeah, like this might allow Bullocks to move up the ranks a bit because, we talk about possible succession plans with Robert Saleh, right? And Gus Bradley obviously is one, especially if Saleh is gone after the one season. But I would say Daniel Bullocks, might be an option.
Sure.
I know his name's been thrown out there in the past. I just don't think he was maybe ready yet. But like these little steps for Bullocks, assuming that maybe he does get added responsibility elsewhere in the defense, these little steps can help him get to that point. We've also talked about KJ Wright. KJ Wright, super green as a coach, right? Like he needs more experience as well. So those small promotions, small added responsibilities, always going to be huge for any of these coaches. So yeah, I do think this could make way for, Daniel Bullocks to get some more responsibility and we'll see how that goes. But like, yeah, I think you're right. We don't really know what this is going to mean. I think we know the 49ers already have a pretty strong, cornerback group. So I don't think we would be worried about them anyway. I mean, Lenore, does he really need he doesn't need any hand holding or someone to develop him. That dude is who he is and he's awesome. But yeah, definitely for the younger guys, Renardo Green, how is he going to do in his now, second year? And then you also have who I assume they'll be drafting another corner this year as well. You mentioned Darrell Luter. So they have some young guys that I think you definitely have to, give some extra attention to in development. So hopefully he can help towards that.
I feel like I'm only connecting dots as we're speaking right now. And what's like the common theme that we've seen so far in this very limited offseason, or with a very small sample size, is just continued investment into the defensive side of the ball. And right now, it can only be done on the coaching side, right? The league year hasn't begun yet. We don't know what the free agents, our existing free agents, how they'll be prioritized by position. We certainly don't know, what the free agent market is fully going to look like yet and how the 49ers are going to dive into that. But all I can consistently see here is the new defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, coming along with that. I always say special teams I always link that as, I know it's its own phase, but I always think defensively, it's more important to not give up things on special teams than it is to make the impact play. Is just my philosophy. I'd rather be better at preventing them from returning kicks and returning punts on me than I necessarily need to be in terms of returning one to the house. And then now this addition as well, it just looks like, and especially if nothing changes for Bullocks, right? Like maybe now his primary focus is the safeties and defensive pass game coordinator, right? And allow him to be more hyper focused on the defensive pass game coordinator type role. Now that he doesn't have to take on the whole secondary. To me, it almost feels like, are the 49ers like starting to pay attention and starting to realize that this thing is slipping away from them more and more because the defense is not living up to the build that it's been when this team has been its most successful in the past, right? Starting with that 2019 year, again in, towards the end of the 2021 season, last year under Wilkes, like the defense did well. Like it had moments, but like, again, it was still a prominent portion. You took the defending Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs, to overtime, right? Like defensively without scoring a lot of points, right? All those things mean like things are going well. I feel like this is just a hyper focus back on the defensive side of the ball. And guess what? The more I think about that, the more I'm actually excited about that, because what have we been saying, Steph, right? Like that's where the investment needs to be. And it feels like so far, again, coaches. And I feel like, okay, if the more of them you have, the bigger your tree gets in terms of who you reach out to, like that impending free agent league vet. We talked about this team's going to need some vets, going to need a lot of youth, but it's going to need some vets to fill some of those roles. Well, Jesus, Gus Bradley's been around this league a long time. Robert Saleh's now made a bunch of stops, around this league. Ray Brown's been floating around the collegiate level for 14 years. He indefinitely knows people here in the NFL that he can reach out to and say, hey, who's a guy that was on your P squad last year that you're not bringing back or you didn't tender that you think can play, right? Like, let me go find. Mm-hmm. I just think they're casting a wider net to invest into the defensive side.
I think so as well. And I think as has been the indication since they hired Robert Saleh, right? And has been the indication because they hired Robert Saleh. I think they want to go with someone who's the head coach of the defense. Like I've said it so many times. I think Robert Saleh was that in the past for this team. I think DeMeco Ryan was that for this team where, hey, like Kyle Shanahan could be a little more hands off with the defense now. He could focus on his side, head coaching the offense, right? And of course he has the admin stuff, but you know what I mean? So I think, it's going to benefit this team greatly. And, we've seen Robert Saleh hiring, new coaches. So I think it just continues to indicate that, a lot is going to go towards revamping this defense, both inside and out. And I am excited about that. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to the most. Like, and I haven't been excited for 49ers offseason in a while. It makes me realize, right? Because I think, especially because the way that, the last couple off seasons or the seasons have ended have been so like heartbreaking that like, I think that we had to mellow in that a little bit before really getting into the off season. I think for a while we knew how this season was going to end up for the 49ers, before it even actually happened. So we had time to grieve that before. And now, we hit the ground running, excited for the draft, excited for free agency. We were a little worried there for a second about who the defensive coordinator was going to be. Now that we know it's Robert Saleh, we're excited again, so I think I'm riding high on the vibes, and I think a lot of the 49ers fandom is too as well.
Yeah. And I know tonight is not the place for this, Steph, but eventually we will talk about, prior to free agency, some of those pending free agents, probably specifically on the defensive side of the ball, that the 49ers should at the very least be interested in. Without naming names, because I don't want us to spiral, there's some big time names out there that feel like they could be in the mix and feel like they would make sense and feel like the 49ers should go get them. Does the investment, in, at least from a coaching perspective, decent defensive side of the ball, say we're going to be aggressive and go get them? Like we're gonna do this now, right? Like we talk about the Saleh window. Now, again, just because Robert Saleh is back doesn't mean it's improvement. Doesn't mean anything, right? But we like to believe that he is more equipped for the job than his predecessor, right? So there should be some improvement.
Bar's low.
Yes, for sure. But that being said, like, okay, if you're already having those conversations, like how long Saleh here, then we're going to have to go through that change again. And do we love another defensive coordinator as much as we love this guy? Don't know. Like, is the time now? You know what I mean? Like, at least on the defensive side of the ball, like, do you go pushing the chips and you go get some of these big name guys that are floating out there because you can? This is actually one of the off seasons where, like, you have the draft capital, you have the finances. Like they don't look as bad as everybody wants to put them out there, especially, I know you got to go pay the big guy, right? But like usually that doesn't really hit in effect till like year 3 of that contract anyway, if you're extending out somebody like Brock, right? So like you're freeing up space doing it versus like taking away space. Like, is now the time? Do you go do what the Los Angeles Rams did when they wanted to go to Super Bowl? They went and leased the team. They leased the team for a year. You know what I mean? Like, they leased with the option to buy, and they chose not to buy. They leased. You know what? I've always been against that strategy. I'm not any longer. I'm like, you know,
because what do you have to
years,
what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose anymore?
Nothing.
You know, you tried it the safe way. That didn't work for you. It's time to go all in, and that's where I'm at. And you might have not caught my show on Friday. It was a short one, but like one of the things that I went over were just some of the, things that the beat writers were saying throughout the week. One of the things that Matt Miyoko said that, really kind of rubbed me the wrong way was that he didn't think it made sense for the 49ers to go after Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
And his reasons didn't make sense to me either. And I was like, God, I hope he's not saying these things because this is how the 49ers feel, and that he's heard that from the 49ers, because basically his reasonings were, why do I keep saying reasonings? It's a word, but like not in this context. Reasons. The reasons that he was giving was that, the 49ers would be giving up way too much draft capital. And the last time they did that, it bit them in the ass because, Trey Lance didn't work out. What was the thing I kept saying to you, Weston? It was like, well, you're going for a known commodity. That is the difference between moving up and giving up 3, first round picks for a draft pick. That's still a project. That's still a projection. That's a huge risk. And while there is some risk involved in doing that for a player that's been in the NFL, you know what you're getting for the most part on any player, and that is the best player at his position. There's less risk in that, and you should be willing to give up whatever it takes. And it would not take 3 first-round picks, by the way, to get Myles Garrett. So I didn't like that point. And then also, he talked about the money standpoint. But again, like I feel like the 49ers need to be on this, like, let's just go all in for a season. Let the chips fall where they may. We figure it out after that. But we put ourselves in the best chance to win a Super Bowl right now. Like to me, that's what Myles Garrett and the, idea of being aggressive for a player like Myles Garrett and a player of his caliber, even Max Crosby, if you want to throw him in there. That's what that represents to me. So I'm not a fan of, feeling like the 49ers shouldn't go after that and that they shouldn't be aggressive. If not now, when? We've waited long enough.
You're only anybody's reservation for going after a Myles Garrett is about compromising the future. That's the way they look at it, right? Compromising the future, giving up what you would need to give up. But I would say the vast majority of this team was built on picks that aren't from those picks that you would give up to get Myles Garrett. So there has been success before from your lesser valued draft capital, right? Like you've had success in building the foundation of the team. Fred Warner, 3rd round pick. George Kittle, 5th round pick. Like, do we need to keep going on and on, right? Diamador Lenore, who just got the bag, 5th round pick. You know what I mean? Like, just saying, like, the one 1st round pick that we're talking about is Bosa, right? Who just fell into our laps. And like, okay, production's dipping right now. You know what I mean? Like, so let's just call it what it is. I agree with you. The known commodity, I'd give up anything for the known commodity because I know what it is. There's literally nothing that's not on the table for me. And I'm not saying the 49ers, it's Myles Garrett or bust in the offseason. I'm saying they need to be involved in those conversations. Because for the 49ers fans that are like, I'm worried about the future. Well, there's 15 other examples for teams that have done this that they're still in the mix, right? Like they haven't like gone away. But the truth is, you're going to care a lot less about the future if you win a Super Bowl.
That's all it is.
That's going to take 5 years off the future where you're going to be like, you just ride the cloud. I've been riding 5 Super Bowl trophies for 30 years. You know what I mean?
How's that
talking about how my franchise is the shit and we ain't won nothing in 30 years. You know what I mean? What do you think the Super Bowl is going to do for me?
Yeah, exactly. You got to admit the steam is running low on that one.
It's out. Like there is no steam. I'm still filling with water and heating it up, making my own steam. Like it's not there no more. But I'm saying you're not going to worry. Like you think Rams fans that were sitting there screaming about mortgaging the future and blah, 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 blah. You think they gave a shit once they won, they hoisted the Lombardi. They're like, all right, cool. We'll be back here in 10 years.
Yeah.
All good. And look, they're back
the Rams
here. They're relevant in less than 3 seasons again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Obviously, there are some scars in that building from the Lance trade, but I don't think that should keep them from making a move on Myles Garrett. That's just not the kind of player that you should have any reservations about. So that's what we'll say on that. Continue to hope that the 49ers are aggressive in
that's all we want.
Aggressive. Just be in the conversation. Yeah. Be part of the conversation. Be a finalist in the conversation. That's what I want. Now,
if he doesn't want to pay California taxes, I understand, but make that be the reason that he doesn't want to come here, not because
we're scared.
Think he's worth a 3rd round pick when he's the best defensive player on the planet. You know what I mean? Like, let's be very clear about that. On the planet, like you go get that guy.
Well, we'll see what big moves, if any, the 49ers make this offseason. Of course, we are expecting / hoping that the 49ers do make a big move in free agency, maybe even in the draft. We'll see. But one small step towards that is taking care of the guys who have already been in the building. So the 49ers had some exclusive right free agents that they intend to tender. Now, what this means is the team could give these players who are exclusive right free agents a qualifying offer, which is a 1-year contract at the league minimum salary based on the player's experience level. Doesn't mean these players are all going to get the same amount, but it will be the league minimum, for these players. So that's good. You get to keep some of these guys at a minimum. That sounds like a win to me, especially when you name some of these players: defensive tackle Evan Anderson, edge Alex Barrett, Sam Okoye-Onunu, linebacker Jalen Graham, offensive lineman Austin Pleasance, tight ends Jake Tongas and Braden Willis, right? So, these are like camp bodies, and some of these guys, like Evan Anderson, for example, UDFA last season, he looked pretty good, in his time playing. Jalen Graham, I want to see more of him. Okoye-Onunu, I like this move, right? And it's those small things. These are going to be guys that you're going to carry into camp. Like I said, they could end up being guys you continue to develop in-house, and who knows what happens after that, right? But so these are 7 guys that the 49ers going to be bringing back for 1 season.
Love it. I mean, I'm more excited about the top 4 of this list than maybe the bottom 3 when all is said and done. But like Steph, I just go back to our own your Monday show that we do throughout the season. We talk about 49K player of the week. Sammy O's name came up more than once. Evan Anderson's name came up more than once. So these are guys in this sport, everybody, your practice squad to the in-season moves that you make to adjust the practice squad, who's called up, everybody's got to touch the football field and everybody's got to make an impact if you want to go to where you want to go. This is not like we're going to be carried by 8 guys. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? This is the ultimate team sport. Like, they need to. And I think these players, Alex Barrett had flashes last year. You know what I mean? I think you and I are both, we haven't seen Jalen Graham flash like in a game, but we have seen in camp, we have seen certain things. You're like, well, this guy, he can play this game and he plays it pretty fast, you know, like he feels like he fits. He's not D Winters fast, but I feel like he fits the mold a little bit about what the 49ers are trying to do at the position. Did they do anything? I'll ask you, with Mason Pline.
I think he was signed to a futures contract.
Contract. Got it. Yep. So not a, okay. Perfect.
So
I thought I saw his name.
Most of the guys who were on the practice squad got the futures contract, including some other guys that I think were maybe on other teams' practice squads that they signed on future. Yep. So those guys will be around, next year as well. As for other types of free agents, right, there's different levels. So as far as restricted free agents, there's only 2 of them, linebacker Curtis Robinson and running back Jordan Mason. Now, this one's a little bit different. So if a team wants to keep a restricted free agent, then they'll place a tender on him. And usually, like, you'll hear around, when the 49ers will do that, or any team, you'll hear, team has put a first round tender, second round tender, or I forget the levels, but it's a round tender that they put on a player. What that means is, because any team can extend an offer sheet to a restricted free agent. And if the 49ers, for example, want to keep that player, then they can choose to match another team's offer for that player. And if they don't, then they can get compensation for that player based on the tender that they had placed on the player. So let's just say, hypothetically, right, Jordan Mason, I know that's one a lot of people care about. He was an undrafted free agent, right? And so the 49ers could do, I think if he's an undrafted free agent, you can't do original round tender because that would be the round that the player was drafted. If he was an undrafted free agent, not sure how that works. I might just default to right of first refusal. But sorry, now, in order to not confuse this too much, I think Jordan Mason has proved that he's more valuable than, having been just an undrafted free agent. So let's just say the 49ers put a 3rd round tender. Hypothetically, that might be high, but let's just say they put a 3rd round tender on Jordan Mason. Here comes another team that makes Jordan Mason an offer, right? Let's just say the 49ers are they're weighing their options. They're like, do we want Jordan Mason or do we want that draft pick that we can get in return? Well, they could choose either one, the 49ers. And if they want to keep him, then they would match that other team's offer for Jordan Mason. And, they keep Jordan Mason. If they lose Jordan Mason, then they get that 3rd round pick from another team
for the following year, though, right? Yeah, it's not in the present year. It's it's like a compensatory pick. Essentially, you're just guaranteeing a compensatory, but you get that team's pick. It's almost like they traded for them. It's kind of like that.
And so
we did this with Jawan Jennings.
Yes.
Right, put a 2nd round tenure or a 2nd round tenure.
And remember last season when the 49ers tried to make an offer on, what was it, Brock Wright, the tight end from the Lions?
Yep. And
who they wanted. The Lions matched the offer. So he stayed with the Lions. But so it could go both ways, obviously. But RFAs is the team still has the upper hand in the situation because they can match the offer, if they truly want to keep them. But, there's always that option that they don't. So I guess, what do the 49ers do with, these two, Curtis Robinson and Jordan Mason. I think I expect Jordan Mason will get interest. I think he's proven his worth. So I think the tender round that they choose for him will be important. It will be key. My question is, like, if another team makes an offer for Jordan Mason, like, do they match it? And I guess it depends on
what the offer is.
The offer depends on the offer, but I gotta imagine. I think Jordan Mason would get an offer based on what he's done that's more than what the 49ers are willing to keep for him. Because I don't know, Weston, I just get the sense that the 49ers just aren't as big on Jordan Mason as everyone else is, as we are. Like, I love Jordan Mason's game, but I'm not bought on the idea that they love him like we do.
I don't know if it's that they don't love him. I just think it's one of those ones where it's like, what's the value, right? Like, he was extremely valuable last year, but you had a very depleted running back room, right? Yeah. We've all said this before. Doesn't matter how good the player's behind. If it's a healthy Christian McCaffrey on the field, he's playing 95% of the offensive snaps anyway, right? So, like, what production are you getting out of him? I value Jordan Mason because I feel like he's the change of pace. He's the hammer. I feel like the biggest thing that was missing for the 49ers this year was the ability to, like, 4-minute offense, control the clock. Like, in our most successful seasons, you can, like, the clock differential from game to game is, like, astronomical, right? Like, the 49ers are just owning the other team and how they're possessing the ball, taking opportunities away from that offense. I don't even have to know. I don't even have to go look at it. I could just tell you this year was not the same, right? Like, it just the flows of the game. So you want that combination. I'm not sold on Guerrero yet. You know what I mean? Like, he's got to stay on the field too. But I agree. I think Jordan Mason put a good enough tape out there that somebody's is willing to take the chance, say, what does this guy do in 16 games, 17 games, And I think he's earned that and deserved that. And I think the 49ers just have to look at it like, how much capital do we want to have tied up into our number 2/number 3 running back? And that's tough, right? Like, I would think any team that's going to make a move for Jordan is giving him the chance to say that, like, you could see a majority of these snaps so long as you win this job in camp. And the 49ers don't have that option for him. So I think that's why the value is a little less. Like, he's not supplanting CMC. And I think there's also some arrogance. Like, look, you led it by saying this. An undrafted free agent, right? That you might now slap a 3rd-round tenure on. Like, that's winning in the draft.
Right.
And this is what they do.
That's the trade for
and this is what they do with running backs. This is what Kyle Shanahan, the league is littered with Shanahan system running backs that were undrafted that have gone on to not only produce as a San Francisco 49er, but have found their ways onto multiple rosters. So much so we have the delusional fans right now wondering if we should entertain bringing Raheem Mostert back. Like, this isn't 2019 Raheem. You know what I mean?
Us 49er fans, we just want to bring everyone
nostalgia. We are just, because we haven't won a damn Super Bowl in 30 years. We are nostalgic. Like,
F it, run it back with the
run it back. You know what I mean?
Run it back again. But yeah, and I think it's also important to look at what the rest of the running back room looks like. As you mentioned, Christian McCaffrey, I think there's optimism, of course, that he's going to be full go in 2025. He's going to be fine, and this Achilles tendonitis thing's going to be behind him. The question is, as far as, the 49ers pending free agents, there's a couple of running backs on this list, Weston. And so you got Patrick Taylor and you got Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell, we've spoken about numerous times about how he's often not available. He's hurt quite a lot, right? Which I think has reduced his value for the team. Now, I know Kyle Shanahan loves him, and I think that's why he's stuck around for as long as he has. But now he's a free agent. Do you bring him back? Like, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think you should. You also have Isaac Guerrero, who the 49ers drafted last year. And not to mention, this is a very deep running back class. It would not shock me if the 49ers drafted another running back in this class. I just don't think Kyle Shanahan could help himself.
No.
He just can't help himself. And they're gonna add another one probably as a UDFA again, right? Which they did with Patrick Taylor last year. I like Patrick Taylor. I do hope they bring him back. But, with these lists of free agents, and there's like 20 plus on here, on the left, you see the defensive free agents in the middle, you see the offensive free agents, and then there's the punter, Pat O'Donnell, all by himself, and, the special teams column. But, but as far as, the must resigns, this list of free agents feels different than, maybe some past ones where I think the must resigns is a lot smaller than it has been in years past.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's more of an indictment on the way the roster was built last year as well, too. Some names that it's time. But just real quick on the running backs, like, here's the reality. Whether it's Mitchell, Taylor, I agree with you wholeheartedly. They'll draft a running back and at least one undrafted free agent, and you already have your 1 and 2 on the roster. So it really just doesn't leave room for Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, Patrick Taylor. Like, they're just the odd man's out, because why would I invest more finances into the position when I can try to catch lightning in a bottle elsewhere, right? Like, rather use a pick than eat up $3.5 million a year in salary to Jordan Mason for a guy who might see 6 to 8% of snaps if he's healthy all year, and take away from the guy that I invested a 4th round draft pick in the year previous from Isaac Rendo. So the math just ain't mathing to retain any of those guys. But I agree with you. Like, Steph, when I look at this list, I don't know, 4, 5 that I say, like, time should be spent trying to lure them back. The rest, it's all going to be part of the annual churn, and you're going to replenish in the draft and with free agents. And you're going to have new names because you got Saleh back. You got Gus Bradley here, Ray Brown in, right? Like, so it's just going to be a new pool that they're going to be fishing in.
Yeah, I think especially with the, defensive free agents, it's easier to kind of let natural attrition happen and bring in new guys now that you have, a new defensive coordinator. Now, Dre Greenlaw, right? Again, one of the things I mentioned on the show Friday was that kind of circling back to Greenlaw, and the comments from last week were that, Matt Barrows said that he doesn't really believe that Dre Greenlaw will be back. Now, we've heard Nick Bosa say that Robert Saleh is adamant on re-signing Dre Greenlaw. That could very well be true, but it could also be true that the 49ers probably feel it's unlikely that they will be able to bring him back. That seems to be the case with Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. Those, I think, are the top names as far as, like, the free agents that have a chance coming back. Or at, some points in the season, it felt like, there were good candidates to come back, but just no longer, right? I obviously would love Dre Greenlaw to come back, but from the team standpoint, I think you can only offer him a 1-year deal, 2 years, if that, just because of, his injury, and, you don't want to take that risk. So I just don't think that's what Greenlaw is looking for right now. He's going to test the market, and I don't think he looks back, because I think there'll be a team willing to give him an offer.
There's always a team. There's always a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars just lingering around that's willing just to throw money at every problem. There's always a team. I think, I think there's a lot of posturing on both sides from, probably Dre Greenlaw and his people. Like, the production's there, right? And you take that injury out in the Super Bowl, like, production's there. Guy warrants a big-time contract. 49ers extended him, right? And gave him some big money after being – what was he drafted 2019? Yeah, he was a 2019 rookie and played his way on and was playing in the Super Bowl in his rookie year. Guy's a baller. He's a gamer. I think there's posturing on both sides. Like, hey, we're not just taking a home team discount either. You know what I mean? Like, yes, cool. You brought Robert Saleh back. He's my guy. He invested in me, whatever. But I think there's a difference here, because I don't know if Dre Greenlaw is the guy, you know what I mean? It's like a team is going to spend on Dre Greenlaw hoping that they get Fred Warner. A team's going to spend on Dre Greenlaw hoping they get Azeez Al-Shaair. Yeah. These are just different build people, right? They play a different position, they command more attention, they command more responsibility, and therefore they command more money. the thing that I just can't get out of, I agree, Steph, he's probably gone. He's my number one priority, especially with this investment in the defense. And the reason why is all you need to know about Dre Greenlaw is you need to just go back and watch the clip of when he got hurt going back out onto the field in the Super Bowl and how it just took the wind out of every single player and every single coach on that staff. One player did that. One player changed the entire complexion of the game. That's kind of hard to ignore. That's a hard thing to ignore. Like if you're the San Francisco 49ers, like, hey, for this defense to be elite, I need Fred Warner playing at the top of his game. And I know he played through basically like, what was it? A freaking broken leg, right? Like the entire season. But we can all say that like the Fred Warner we saw weeks 1 through 4 is not what we saw for the remainder of the season, right? When we were all talking about like this guy is going to win DPOY, like unquestionably. So I don't know. I don't know what you're willing to invest, but I do think this is the NFL. There's going to be new coaches, new general managers, new things. Somebody wants to make a splash. He's going to be somebody's prize free agent signing, and that's going to put him out of play for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I believe so as well. Now, I think, Weston, there's like priority free agents that you want to bring back. And like we said, we both agree Dre Greenlaw is your priority free agent that you want to get after. Now, there's also those second tier, third tier guys that like back are your roster fillers that they will maybe test free agency, but they're going to be available to come right back for cheap. You know, there's always those guys. So I think it's way more likely that we see those guys come back, and it's like it's not going to be any like sexy names or anything like that, but it's going to be, like I said, back half of your roster fillers. And I also think that the majority of those will be on the offensive side, because I think, again, we're mentioning the Saleh thing, and I don't think he'd be interested in bringing back a lot of these guys on the defensive side. Maybe Javon Hargrave for cheap, but again, it depends kind of what his market will look like. But I think it's more likely, you know, you get someone maybe like a Chris Conley back, run it back for a third time, however many times it's been.
4 different numbers since he's been on this team.
Poor guy. A Ben Barch, for example, you know, I think there's opportunity for, you know, those lower tier guys to maybe come back.
And it's at the obvious positions where you need the most depth, right? Offensive line, defensive line, right? Like I wouldn't be, you mentioned Javon Hargrave. I'd love for him to come back. Problem is he's in his brain, he's still the player from 2021, right? And or 2022, and he's not. Like he's not that guy. He didn't play, you know, he tear the pec this year and missed all that time on a massive balloon contract. He's just going to price himself on discussions. But on the defense side, like Kevin Givens, probably see him back. He's come and gone. But like you said, Ben Barch, I'd love to see Jalen Moore brought back on the offensive side. When he saw time at the end of last year, he didn't disappoint, right? Like he didn't look like the same player he looked like earlier in his career when he would get spot time. So, but I think you're right. Like 6 names here will probably be back on the roster next year. 4.5 of them are going to be from the defensive side of the ball. Like 4 to 5, right? Will be on the offensive side of the ball, I think. And it's going to be the trenches. And to your point, new coaches, new faces. So like I need some D tackle depth. Sal's going to say, from my 4 years in New York, these are 3 guys that I want to go look at. You know what I mean?
There'll be plenty of that.
Yeah, 100%.
There will be plenty of that. I have a buddy who does Jets content, Dom C. Great guy. Saw him out at the Senior Bowl. And, you know, when Saleh got hired back with the 49ers, he gave me like a list of guys from the Jets that like, I could see these guys like following Saleh like to San Francisco. So keep an eye on these guys. And it was a decent list. And I'm like, you also got some good players. And at positions in need for the 49ers would make a ton of sense. Who is it? Jermaine Sherwood, linebacker, who would make a lot of sense, of course, if Dre Greenlaw departs. Ashton Davis, the safety, you know, so there's definitely some options for the 49ers, not to mention Gus Bradley, who is defensive coordinator for the Colts. Like there's going to be free agents there as well. So yeah, there's going to be some guys. I think also the 49ers want to get younger. They want to get faster. Like yes. So free agency draft is going to be huge, to making all of that happen. So I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the turnover is going to look like, what the new, not identity, because I think the identity of this defense, of this team, has always been there. It's just about bringing it back. It's going to look a little different, right? It might be with a different swagger, but all in all, it's the same type of energy.
I think the expectation is simple, right? Like both the offense and the defense of this team are going to be mirror images of those who lead them. Kyle Shanahan on offense and Robert Saleh on defense. So while different names, expect some same things in the sense of like they're going to look for guys who fly to the football, right? They want to be fast on defense and just fiery, passionate players, right? Like, because that's what the sideline is going to look like, right? And they want people that match that intensity. So it'll be new names, new faces. But I think a lot of the same old in terms of like what the expectation, what the 49er defensive standard is going to be is if you're going to make a mistake, you need to make it at 150 miles an hour and then nobody's going to care. Don't be caught out of place and walking around like that ain't going to fly on this defense like maybe it has in years past. But I'm with you, Steph. Like I'm excited, but I'm insanely nervous about the offseason. And I'm nervous because I don't want to be disappointed because I'm actually excited. I tend to be a little bit more of a realist from time to time when we're going into these things. Like, no, we're not in the market for these people. No, they're not going to do this. They're going to run it back, right? They're comfortable here. They had a succession plan for that player. That's always been kind of the feel as of late. Like now it feels like, guys, the pieces are there for you to go make the moves that you want to get you back to, relevancy and at the very least back into the playoffs, right? Like, let alone where this team and this roster should be. But I get nervous because I do, critiquing my own team that I root for. They come up short in these moments. Like they're not willing to go the extra million. They're not willing to go the extra 6th or 7th round pick to complete the trade. They just try to get too cute.
Safe. They keep it aggressive, but safe. It's time to just be aggressive and aggressive only. I completely agree with you, but I'm excited to see what happens in any case. And excited for some new players. Speaking of, now on Friday, going to be debuting my show with Wayne Breezy. All right. Last Friday, I told you guys I did debut a new segment called 49K Draft Club, which is pretty much like a book club, but for the draft. So I gave you guys a couple of names of guys you should watch. I said Jalen Walker from Georgia, and I said Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. I hope you guys have checked them out or will check them out before Friday. We'll compare notes. But as far as your guys' recommendations, I got Charles Grant, who I watched. I got Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle TJ Sanders. I got a bunch of names, right? And one that I'm going to add as well that I'll definitely watch before Friday is CJ West, who the 49ers actually met with at the Shrine Bowl. If you guys have not checked out my draft sheet yet, make sure you guys do that. There's names being added almost every day. We're a week away from the NFL Combine, and there's close to 50 names on this list already of players that the 49ers have met with throughout the process. In the last week alone, there's been 4 names added. So make sure you guys check that out. The link is on my Twitter. I'll post it in the description of this video as well. But appreciate all of you for, giving me a list of names to check out for, I thought I had it up on the list, but here we go. Sorry, thought I had it up on the screen. But yeah, I'll continue watching players for the draft club on Friday again with Wayne Breezy. So make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review, like this video. But yeah, that is all for us tonight, folks. From me, from Weston. Have a good rest of your Monday. Peace.